Ballarat, it holds such a special place in the heart of all Sainers. The old VFL rules through the 1980s meant that St Kilda had access to some of Ballarat's finest local talent, and boy did it deliver. Names like Joffa Cunningham, Greg Burns, the great Tony Lockett, and St Kilda's favourite son, Danny Spud Frawley. We have a very special guest waiting for us here at Bungaree, so let's go say hello.
The small things that we do.
Chelsea Frawley.
Hey Joey, how you going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Welcome to mighty Bungaree.
Thanks for having me. My first thought driving in, such a small town, yet it's so famous for anyone who follows AFL. The boy from Bungaree. Everyone has heard about Bungaree, all because of your dad.
Yeah, absolutely. He was born and bred here. He established his amazing work ethic here, working on the farm with his dad Brian and his brother Michael. The Bungaree Football Club, where we are today, is home to many Frawleys.
So he grew up on the farm with the family, obviously loved it here. Did he talk a lot about it to you? I mean, you came and you played your junior sporting here as well, so he obviously had a strong connection. Did he talk a lot about what it was like for him growing up around here?
He loved training in this area. We'll go past Mount Warren Heap in a little bit, but that's where he kind of got some miles into his legs. Every time we used to come up here, he'd point at the mountain and be like, that's where I worked really hard to be able to get onto a list. I think he used to run it every morning. I think it was an 8K return trip up and down the mount. He wasn't always the fastest runner, but he was always the hardest worker.
Well, I really appreciate your time and sharing stories about your dad and taking us through a little bit of the Bungaree history and the connection to Ballarat. But now I want to go and see a few of these famous landmarks. Do you mind showing me around town?
Absolutely, let's go.
Let's do it. So just talk us a little bit about where you've brought me, Chelsea.
We're on the infamous Mars Road. Dad grew up to the right-hand side as a young boy, and then him and Mum bought their first property to the left-hand side. And you'll be able to see as we go for a drive in a minute all of the trees he planted along the road. And then the next property they bought was where we grew up. Playing sport here and coming up here every weekend.
And where your dad used to do his training? Whereabouts did he used to run?
So as a young boy, he would run all the way up to the top of Mount Warren Heap and back, and then the same when he was living down here with Mum as well.
And just tell me, Chelsea, what is that? It looks like a castle. Surely it's not a castle in the middle of Bungaree.
That's the infamous Crowell Castle. Dad and Mum used to tell me a few stories about a few late nights they had there. And apparently it was a rave or a disco or a nightclub or something of that nature. But yeah, that's the Crowell Castle.
Well, Chelsea, thank you for hosting me around Bungaree today. I do have another special guest waiting for me, but I appreciate your time. As I said earlier, Ballarat and Bungaree hold a special place in the heart of all Sainers, and your dad's legacy will live on forever, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Joey.
Ken Sheldon, appreciate your time. Great to see you again. Carlton legend, three-time premiership player. Obviously, we're here talking about the Saints. So 1987, so Danny Frawley is appointed captain. Was he still travelling to Ballarat and back at that stage?
No, he had a lovely home here in Brighton, but he was, like, because of Bungaree and the family farm and the connections and, so entrenched in Ballarat, he was, or at least a couple of times a week.
Yeah. So what were some of the stories? Because there is that famous Ballarat crew that used to travel up and down. What was those sort of stories and locker room banter like about the boys that used to travel back and forth?
Yeah, well, there was plenty of that. A few beers and a few sort of distractions, a few deviations, detours and all that sort of stuff. But also on the way down was difficult. They'd be leaving work or whatever they were doing and rushing down. Like, the freeways weren't there those days. It was, stoplight after stoplight. And they'd rock up here at training right on the button and then be out on the track. It was a recipe that was just looking for a strained hamstring, strained quadricep, so it had to change.
So specifically, do you remember getting Tony Lockett to move to Melbourne? Do you remember how was he reluctant? Because he seems like he would have enjoyed his life in Ballarat. How was that getting him to move to, I think, Pearcedale?
Do I remember? I certainly do. There was a significant investment by the football club and everybody around for that to happen, and it was a magnificent property that we had. He kicked a lot of goals living and residing closer to the home training base. So I think it worked from that point of view. Yeah, it was an interesting time on how to change people's lives a little bit for the good of the group.
What were some of the changes and the mentality of you as coach, particularly with that Ballarat crew, as you touched on, trying to maybe get them to become more professional?
Your philosophy in football was to win the contest, win the one-on-one, and then use it well, but also be able to defend. So you had to have everybody sort of understanding how that pattern, that game flow was going to roll. And of course it was very focused on Lowe and Lockett because they were such outstanding players, and Danny was really the key defender. So we had to put some support around him to try and get that happening. We recruited the likes of Russell Morris, who was a fantastic player. David Grant become a real solid rock across that half back, and we started to become a reasonably competitive outfit. We were sitting right on the edge of the 5 or the 6, whatever it was, right on the edge of the finals, and we had to beat Melbourne at the MCG. And Lowie couldn't play because of a bruised kidney, so Danny played centre forward.
Really?
Yeah. And at 3/4 time, the game was right there.
Yeah.
And my 3/4 time speech, I went to Lockett, so it was a sort of a mongrel day. And I went to Lockett and I said, "Do you think you've got the fitness in you? If I open it right up, you can kick 4." He said, "I'll kick 4." In 3/4 time, I said, "Danny, centre half forward, everyone out. Doesn't matter if there's 6 or 8 back there with Lockett, just keep banging it in there, right?"
Yeah.
And he just go boom, boom, 4 goals.
Right.
And in the finals.
They made the finals. Another significant chapter in St Kilda's history was the move to here, Waverly Park. It was a transformative time not only for the club moving away from Moorabbin, but also for the AFL. It was the home to some of the most memorable moments in St Kilda's history. The iconic lights out game, winning pre-season premierships and breaking a long-standing finals drought. But it was also home to some of our most iconic cult heroes through the 1990s.
Peter Spider Everett, there he is, the legend.
Well, my dreadies were, I don't want to reveal it, they were actually fake.
What?
Yeah, they used to take 4 hours to do it. It used
Really?
to be horsehair.
I think there's another cult hero for a different reason.
He's one of the greats.
He's waiting for us upstairs.
Here he is.
Another cult hero, Lazar. Appreciate your time. Good to see you.